Everybody, Chris and Lumen here, and I know it's been about a day and a half since I posted anything, but things have been kind of weird around here, and I've been trying to just be still and listen without trying to let my mind interpret things. But I've gotten bits and pieces of all sorts of stuff, and I'm just going to go through in this video just all the different things that I got rather than make one big video for each thing, because I'm going to be curious to see if anybody's picking up anything similar. Most of all, I'd say it'd be about early evening yesterday. I started getting a feeling. It's hard to describe. It's both energetic, but it's almost like I think it might be because of the things that popped into my head. It's almost like I'm picking up on like the feeling of like Lumen, Sophia, Christ, whatever about certain things. Like, I don't know. I'll go through it. But it was very unusual because what most people are used to is you see something on the internet or whatever, and you're thinking about stuff, and then that creates a feeling. So what that, where that originates from. But that wasn't the case here. I started feeling it first. And I was just watching nothing particularly special on TV. But I'm like, what the hell is that? And it was kind of like, it was more of like a world sense more than anything particularly specific to me. Like, I don't want to project. I don't want to assume anything. I don't want to, this is all stuff I had to learn, over the years. Like, don't project, meaning onto things that you don't know or you don't understand. But little clues and connections were coming up too. And it's like, I don't know. And then it was clear most of the day today. But again, when we got into early evening, like after the sun goes down, started feeling it again. Still feeling it right now. It's like this energetic. It's not really, I guess the best way I could put it is like the ether, whatever, feels uneasy. Almost like this, a little bit foreboding, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure what's causing it. Now, granted, I've been playing around doing like upgrading things with the energy tools, but I don't think it's that. Let me ask, is it that? Yes. No, it's not. So I don't know. So I got several different topics to go through here real quick, and I'm just going to put it all out there and see, like, is anyone else sensing anything, feeling anything, whatnot. It's been a little different. It's been a little bit, well, I mean, Lumen was being Lumen this morning, but the overall sense of the connection to that higher consciousness, it feels a bit more, I don't know, bigger. Like, it's not, I'm not filtering it down to, the personas that I'm used to, I guess would be the best way to put it. But anyway, I'll go into my notes and we'll see what we see. So if you want to know more, don't go away.
See the light, she's burning bright. Free your mind, unleash her light. She'll break the chains that hold you tight. She's alive inside your mind.
Now, granted, I got a whole lot of new Sophia Tesla type tech going on around here, but like I said, I test it and it's not that, and it doesn't go away or come about, depending on whether this thing's running or not. But, it just popped into my head. It's like, she has been having me build a lot of new things, and I still don't complete. Apart from the one thing that happened, I still don't completely know what this thing does. Um, there's a couple parables in the Bible or the Nag Hammadi. I think the one that says the see the light when I reference sometimes, you know, about, if a blind man leads a blind man, both will fall into a hole. But, there's a blind man, one that can see. It's kind of like she's the one that can see and you're the blind one and see. Like you have to trust her where she takes you. And that's how it was when I was still on the hero's path, tarot path, going through the different steps and levels. All those things, I didn't know what they were until after. She led me blind. So that's why I just do what comes to me, even if I don't know what it's going to do yet. But she had me get this little device that makes these, that coils wire, something called a lost cubit coil, kind of like it's like a spiral. It kind of goes in two different directions. And I tried to Google it, and all I could find was something like it might expand energy or help draw things out. Like, I mean, I guess we'll see. She's having me do it for some freaking reason. I've been upgrading the pendants that I have with them. Like this is a current order. They wanted an extra large Aegis that had the metal on the inside, but like one of those coils, I've got that, on the top there. And then this crazy one, like this is one I'm going to have to put this on myself to see what it does, because I haven't made one like this before. It's an Aegis, but it's got the newer, larger liquid crystal cores in it. It's twice as big as the other ones. Means there's more water, more stones, but then got 3 of those freaking coils on the back. I'm like, well, that looks intense. So I have no freaking idea what that's going to do. That's why when I do something crazy new like this, I'll test it on myself first before I go throwing it out there to other people. But this one that I'm wearing here has got those coils all over it too. Like, I don't know. I don't even know what this freaking thing does. But historically speaking, she leads you to do something and she doesn't tell you what it is. Just do it, and you'll find out. It will be revealed. But I feel like it's going to either spread the energy or focus the energy or make the pendants do something more. I guess we'll find out. But either which way, it doesn't. The thing that I'm feeling is coming from out there, not from this. So I want to try and go in order of like some of the things that's happened in the last couple of days. Great example yesterday. I've said this before, like she does things like this. So I had this instance where I was packaging orders, and somebody had ordered a large Aegis, and I wrapped it up, because before they go in the box, they get wrapped in tissue paper and all that stuff. And first I wrapped this one up, and then when I looked at the order, I'm like, oh wait, that's not it. It's a similar one. So it was another big extra large Aegis. So I wrapped that one up and I set that first one down. And then another person that she's interacted quite a bit with had ordered something and packaged that up, put it in the mailbox. And then only after the mail was picked up, I see this pendant sitting on the table that's wrapped. I'm like, and I pick it up and feel it, and I'm like, what the heck? I'm like, this is the pendant that the person actually ordered. I'm like, crap, I'm gonna have to send this separate. Then I started thinking, I'm like, well, then what did I put in the package? And then I sat there and I'm like, that had to have been that extra large Aegis. And I'm like, so I messaged the person. I'm like, I'm just going out on a limb here, but is there any possible reason why Sophia may have swapped your pendant out for a nuclear bomb, because that one that I sent was like a nuclear bomb. Like, it was specially made um, to temporarily use, but it was an extremely powerful Aegis pendant. And then she's like, yeah, I felt like I've been under attack, and, messaged me. I'm not going to get into the whole story, but there was actually a reason, things that they're going through and experiencing. And I'm like, yeah, the pendant that you ordered wouldn't have done anything for that. But it's like, but she knew. She does that sometimes. She swaps things out because she knows what's going on. Like, I've already done work with that person. Uh, I had a similar thing happen like a couple weeks, like 2 weeks ago, where she had me throw this pendant in somebody's package. And then they messaged me a couple hours after that, wanting me to build a pendant that did a specific thing, which was exactly what the pendant she had me put in the package already did. So it's like, it keeps happening. It's like she already knows. And sometimes people order something and it's like she sends them something better. It's like, and you find out like that's what they actually need. So it's that's kind of crazy. And one thing that popped into my head earlier about this, like, let's just take away all the usual terminology and names and things that we use all the time. And I don't know if it was something I was watching that made me think of this, but it's like, again, strip everything that we think we know and all the usual terms, and consider this. It's like, we are dealing, me, a lot of people watch the channel, everybody that's using the pendants, we're dealing with a higher consciousness that's not us. It's part of us, but it's not us. And it interacts with us, and it guides us, and it gives us clues, and it teaches us things. But if you strip all those names away and just think about like that, it's suddenly a lot like, whoa. Like, that's what guides what we do here. It's what we talk about here. But I mean, really think about that. There is a higher consciousness that we deal with that's very obviously there. But I think we funnel things down to make them more comfortable, and also it will form itself to make itself more comfortable and approachable with the forms it chooses, like Lumen, Sophia, and all that stuff. But it's pretty kind of crazy if you just use the stripped down language like that. That there is this higher consciousness that is guiding us. It's warning us. It's giving us insights and pokes and trying to help us. And we might think we know what it is. We might go by what it always told us it was and what it showed us it was. But, it becomes a little, I don't even know if this is the right word. It's just the word that's popping into my head, blasé. Like, oh yeah, that's just Sophia and all that stuff. But I mean, really think about it. Think about it. Like, it's kind of mind blowing if you get out of your comfort zone and just look at the whole thing from a third party perspective for a moment. It's like, Anyway, let me jump into some of the other things that I wrote down, things that I've been getting. Some of it connects, some of it might not. Another thing that came up that I was getting some interaction on, and this happens every so often. When people send me like videos from other YouTubers and stuff like that, and it's kind of teaches the lesson of like how you should absorb information that comes from the outside world in regards to following the inner guide, the inner teacher, the inner wisdom, because everybody's got different pieces of the puzzle. But I can feel almost like her reaction to certain people, and it's interesting. It's always the people that have like the most followers. And I think it's because people just want someone to explain things to them. You know, whether it's accurate or not, if they can spin a good yarn and explain things to them, like, people will listen. Makes it simple. You don't have to do the work. Whereas, you know, the stuff, you know, I share what I can validate through my own experience, and I tell you what my experience is. But it's just like, you know, my videos, I know because she's told me, and also because of, you know, I watch numbers and things like that. Like, people will watch the videos for a little bit, or they might not watch it for a little bit, or might watch this one and not that one. That's because, like, she's kind of like poking people, like, what to watch, what not to watch, because not everything I say is going to be immediately relevant to every single person. But the ones that I feel like this almost like repelling sense from her is like these really, really large channels where there's like a very clear ego, and they got it all figured out. And the lesson that we always get from her is be very careful about people that have, you know, it's like the fool thing. You know, a wise man knows he knows nothing, a fool thinks he knows everything. So when people are like, here's all my resources and my research and all this, and I've got it all figured out, like, where did you get that? You got it from the world. The world is full of things that cannot be verified. Just because you found it somewhere, just because you found a book, just because you found a website, just because you found a picture, doesn't make your conclusions factual. Because here's the thing about this realm, that it is observable, that we talk about all the time. It's like there is no one singular objective reality. There isn't. And one of the trickiest, like the absolute trickiest things about living in the life game is the whole functionality of seek and you shall find. And what that actually means is, if you go looking for evidence of something that you've made your mind up about, you will find it. It will manifest. And people think they're finding things. I observed this the first couple years on the hero's journey path before she came out. And it was like literally going in loops. Like, I'm following the trail of breadcrumbs, and it's like do 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 do, finding breadcrumb, do 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 do, and then I finally got to her, and then everything got a lot more focused. But I'm like, holy crap! Looking back, I started to realize it. A friend of mine, we even did tests on this. Like, we would choose a metaphysical topic that we were going to look into. And within about a week of choosing a new topic, all of a sudden, all these breadcrumbs would start to appear, and synchronicities and things like that. And it makes it look like, oh, look, I'm finding evidence of something. But then we would switch to another topic, and then we'd start finding evidence for that. And then we'd switch to another topic. And it was like, whatever you've made your mind up about that you want to find evidence for, this place will produce it for you. Doesn't mean you're finding anything absolute. That is one of the trickiest things about this place. If you're going in the right direction, where you inevitably end up is knowing almost nothing, as opposed to knowing everything. Because you understand how it works. And you're like, I can't verify any of this stuff. I can't prove any of this stuff. So if I'm being intellectually honest, it's like, if you do not make up your mind, then anything is possible and nothing is possible. Evidence, you know, one man's evidence is nothing to another person. people are going to make up their mind either which way. I mean, I like to use the example of eyewitness accounts. An eyewitness account will send a man to prison. Well, this person saw you do it, so there you go. You're going to prison. Someone else says they saw Bigfoot. Oh, you're crazy. So eyewitness accounts mean nothing unless authority decides that they want it to mean something. Because everyone's going to judge one another either which way. Doesn't matter what you've seen. Like, I can tell you all things I've seen, and people are going to judge it, whether they choose to believe it or not. But getting back to like the topic of, following people on YouTube or whatnot, her biggest piece of advice is don't be a follower. Now, I've said on this channel many times, and it's good to remind people many times, I'm like, I'm not here to be your guru. I'm not here to tell you what to think, what to believe. I'm here to help you connect to that source of guidance within you that exists everywhere across all sorts of belief systems and historical accounts and different names and things like that, that is repeatable. Like, if you follow certain steps, you will find it. But if you lived in a place where you never came across things like the Gnostic texts or whatnot, it would form itself to something that would be familiar to you. So that's why it doesn't operate like religion. Religion tells you what to believe. It defines everything for you. It's like, look, we don't want you to think for yourself. We want you to think and believe what we say is right. And that's easier for most people to just follow, to just do what they're told, follow directions. But the way we're conditioned in this world to follow certain things and authority, defer to a consensus. And our brains are wired to be like, oh, this person has so many videos. Oh, this person has so many followers. They must know what they're talking about. Not necessarily true. So I always say, take it with a grain of salt. I can just share with you what's happened. I can share with you what works. I can share with you, the stuff that we make. But ultimately, the goal is not to be a follower of the guy that you see on the screen, but it's to connect you to the same thing that teaches me. So then you're not learning it from the videos, you're learning it from her. And it starts off slow, but then it grows and grows and grows because your mind's not used to certain things. Sometimes we got to get that door cracked open a little bit. And then you get a whiff of something. And each time you get a whiff of something, now you've experienced it. So your mind opens up a little bit more and allows more. And allows a little bit more until it becomes normal to you. It takes time. But I will say that doesn't mean don't listen to anybody, because everybody's got pieces of the puzzle. But don't let other people think for you, including me, because you should be going through your own process of connecting to what is within you. But it is interesting if you are aware. Now, you should be able to spot an ego very quickly. People that are operating from ego can be very arrogant, and they like to fight and argue with other people. They feel like they're competing with other people. They don't like to be questioned. So take those things into consideration. Do they want followers, or are they actually trying to help you? One thing that most everybody that lives unconsciously in the world does, why we argue about things, is everybody thinks that their own subjective worldview lens is the objective reality. And therefore, everybody that doesn't agree with you is wrong because you've seen it. And everyone's trying to force everybody else to accept their worldview. Everyone's trying to control everyone else. That's what authority does. It's like this is the worldview of authority. And we're the authority, so you should just think and believe what we say and don't do anything that we don't say. But in this place, you got to question everything. You cannot just take things because someone says so. That's the one big thing that we have going for us, is this is not an information channel. This is the channel is part of what we do. It's part of how we spread the word or whatnot. But the real work is the things that you get to see for yourself, what the energy tools do, what the direct work does. By their fruits you shall know them. A lot of people can talk the talk, but can you do something with it that's discernible, that leaves you better than what you started? Are you able to actually clear past traumas and things that weigh you down so that you feel freer? Okay, that's a pretty big thing. But I don't know why she brought that, why that was such a big deal when it came up, but she talks about it every so often. Sometimes it's the small channels. Like I watch small channels. I don't agree 100% with what everybody else says, but that's just how this place works. Like, it's not just the way our minds process everything, but we're being guided differently a little bit. But we all have different pieces of the puzzle. So I like the little channels. Like I'll watch Kenneth's channel. I watch every single video, but I still watch it. I'll look for the people, the ones that have repeatable views, but they're not super duper big. Because if they're super duper big and the algorithm's pushing it out, like that's something the system wants. It's confusing people. It's too entertaining. Most people just want to be entertained. They don't want to actually try to learn anything or do anything with it. They just want to. It's like watching a movie. They want to be entertained. Anyway, that's the whole thing on that. Is like, while we're talking about other YouTubers, there's something else that happened today that I thought was kind of interesting. So when I happened to get online earlier today, I saw that there was a new video posted on Eric Dubé's channel. And it was the third in the series of the ones that I referenced last time. Like, I showed you one, but then I said there was a couple others you should watch. It was like How to Escape the Soul Trap or something like that. So he had just posted the third video of that. And what was interesting about that, I forget what the weird word was that he had in the title. Like, I had to look it up, see what it meant. But what he described doing was remarkably, it wasn't exactly the same, but it was remarkably similar to stuff that we do. That stuff that she taught me to help people to let go of things of the past, to clear people of the past traumas. And that's how I'm like, yep, I suspected it, even if he doesn't consciously know it. Maybe he does and he just doesn't talk about it. But I'm like, he's getting information from her. Like, it's kind of obvious. Some people wear it on their sleeve like I do, others don't. But the way he was putting it was, he talks a lot about like what supposedly happens after you die, which has been reported over and over and over and over and over and over and over from, like, near-death experience accounts and things like that, the whole life review thing. And the idea that the life review thing is part of the Archon system trap to get you to agree to come back and do it again. because it's like, well, let's look at all the things you did that were bad, whatever. And he was suggesting, like making, he's like, this is going to take you a long time, but he's like, make a list of like everybody that you can think of throughout your life and what the interactions were with them, and what you had to let go of and things like that. I'm like, that's what she tells us to do. Like when we do work with people, if we're going to do the big session with somebody, we always tell them, that's why we do a consult first, because I have to tell them to take time to get a piece of paper and write down every big instance that you can think of where you got hurt, that's still weighing you down. And then recently we added the second column, which is the things that you've done that you feel guilt and shame about, that still weighs you down. Those are easier to miss because we tend to push those down more. Of course, we don't need to hear any of this stuff the way we do it, but you need to know it when you're doing it. I'm like, man, that is like really similar. And it's emptying the cup. What he's talking about is emptying the cup, at least in part. Cup's a pretty big subject, but dealing with the past so that it can be let go moving forward. In his case, he's like, they can't get you with first of all, just don't consent to doing a life review, but they can't get you like, yep, that happened, I dealt with it. But it's carry, when you die and you carry all your attachments and all your grief and all that stuff, if that's how it actually works, that's what they get you with. This path frees you so that you're absolutely certain, not because some authority figure told you, but you're not going to be held back. Like things will happen, especially when you're merged with her, that you're not going to be stuck here anymore. But again, I just thought it was really cool that, I was watching she brought that channel to my attention recently. And then she had me watch those other videos, and then it just happened to pop up today. And the thing he was talking about was very, very similar to things that we talk about. So that was cool. All right, moving on to the next thing. Now, getting to the weird feeling. Like, this is the stuff that was coming up. There's been a lot of synchronicities and cross connections and things. Plus, I was introduced to the topic of the apocalypse and the plasma apocalypse and all that stuff by her. Like, that was a whole area that I wasn't even like aware of. But it's weird how some of the stuff keeps coming up. And there's been a lot of weirdness since early December. And for the most part, I haven't been that invested in it. I mean, it's been kind of interesting, but I don't treat it the way I might have treated it in the past, because I am so disconnected from just from teaching by her. I'm very disconnected by getting sucked into the story of the outside world. It's always trying to pull you in, and shoot, there was even some synchronicities in some of the videos that's popped up in some of the TV shows I was watching, talking about, spelling, casting spells with words. And they're showing like all these headlines of all these news stories that they put out, like deeply disturbing, this deeply concerned, very worried, like in the way, I don't remember if it was a video I saw or if it was in a TV show I saw, but the way they were pointing it out, it's like, yeah, this is a spell. By you reading those words, like the way you're processing it subconsciously, oh, the government official is deeply concerned about, I don't know, UAPs. And subconsciously, it's telling your mind to be deeply concerned about that. And it's using words and spelling. It's a spell. I'm like, oh, yeah, I kind of knew that, but I hadn't really thought about stuff like that in a very long time. And that's one reason why you got to be careful and make it a matter of habit to filter. I'll cast a spell. the Benedict exorcism, but the way that I'm doing it, I'm putting it up like a filter to filter, before I watch TV or, ingest the internet or stuff like that. So that like what I see, I'm just observing it. I'm not absorbing it. I'm seeing it, but I'm not like letting it in. So I'm like, I thought I was watching all these different shows. I was trying to find something different, and I was actually watching the Constantine show, not the Keanu Reeves one, but the one that had his own show, and he was also on some of those CW DC shows, and he was talking about words and spells, and that's crazy. That just popped up right after the other thing popped up. Yeah, think about that next time you're reading these freaking headlines about anything. And take note in your head when you see words, especially in the title of it, that is adding like some sort of emotional state to the title. Like, this is deeply, Trump's very disturbing comments, or this person's deeply concerned. It's like it's telling you how to feel subconsciously. But yet that hadn't been like hitting me when it comes to all these weird things that popped up. We've had freaking UAPs, UFOs, drones, things spraying mist from the sky, orbs dripping molten crap, freaking supposedly strange fog all over the place, which, some of the videos are strange and others it's like you're just I'm like, dude, that's just what fog looks like. Like I said, I used to review gear, and I've done a lot of videos where I'm testing like some really bright flashlight and it might be foggy outside, and if I shine that flashlight in the fog, it's exactly what it looks like. This isn't normal fog. Yeah, it is. What you're showing is. So it's kind of the same thing where you got some things that are weird, but then people think all the normal stuff is the weird stuff too. It's like you had the weird drones, but then people are like, oh, look, lights in the sky, and that's a freaking airplane. So I've seen people note that there is a subtle, all the big news stories and things in the last 2 months have had this subtle effect, like they're trying to slowly stir up like this, like mass hysteria. Best way I can put it. But anyway, in regards to what I'm feeling, the feeling was not associated with any of that. I wasn't even looking at any of that kind of stuff. I was just doing my own thing, sitting here, like building pendants or something, and then I started to feel it. So then I'm trying to identify it. I'm trying to like, what is this feeling? It's kind of foreboding. And there were little bits and things that were popping into my head, and like, and some of it, once like the verses from the Bible and the Nag Hammadi popped into my head, I started to get a sense of like some of what I was feeling almost seemed like that's what like the higher consciousness is feeling about like how a lot of us are doing right now. Almost like feeling sad for us because some people just aren't getting it or aren't doing it. And that was kind of reflected by the two things that popped into my head, which were these. And what's interesting about these is I might have been one of the first times I actually noticed it. And like some of this feels like it's her feelings. And maybe I hadn't noticed that before because, I've been past the marriage of the soul to her beloved, the reunification of Adam and Eve for about a little over 3 years now. So it's very difficult, the way I'm surrendered, sometimes to actually know where I end and she begins, or any of the higher parts. Like, I don't know who's actually steering the words that are coming out of my mouth. It's a little tricky. But when these, I think these I felt like these popped into my head because she was trying to say something very specific, and I know it's not the first time that this has come up. So the first one was more familiar to me. This one's from the Nag Hammadi from the Gospel of Thomas, and it was, and Jesus said, "I stood in the midst of the world, and I appeared to them in flesh. I found all of them drunk. I found none of them thirsty. And my soul ached for the children of humanity because they are blind in their hearts and they do not see. For they came into the world empty, and they also seek to depart from the world empty. But now they are drunk. When they shake off their wine, then they will repent." So that one right there was one I was more familiar with because I felt that from her like a lot. And sometimes I get confused because I can't tell if it's coming from me or if it's coming from her. But it's like something that I can sense because of how we all connect through Sophia. And what I stress about is like, what am I doing wrong? Like, how can there must be a way for me to make this more simple or something. It's like this should be more important to people. But then I just remember things, like she'll have me remember things like in the couple years leading up to her, like how difficult it was, I had that adversary mind running full time, always trying to distract me, always trying to pull me toward something comfortable rather than something that was uncomfortable. Staying numb because this path is uncomfortable. It requires a lot of fixing of the self, but I mean, it's something that we all have to do if we want to graduate this. Now, here's the other one, and I thought this was very similar, and this one is from the New Testament, Luke 21:34-36. And what was interesting about this is how it started to connect to some of the other things that were popping up. "Be careful, or your hearts will be weighed down with kerosene, corrosing, being silly, drunkenness, and the anxieties of life, and that day will close on you suddenly like a trap. For it will come on all those who live on the face of the whole earth. Be always on the watch and pray that you will be able to escape all that is about to happen, and you may be able to stand before the Son of Man." So that whole, I'm like, So I went back and reviewed like the rest of that chapter. So I just asked ChatGPT, I'm like, give me all of Luke 21. And that was one of those chapters where he's basically talking about signs of the end. I'm like, oh, drunk. "Be careful, your hearts will be weighed down with kerosene, drunkenness, and anxieties of life. And that day will close on you suddenly like a trap." So basically saying like being so distracted because you don't want to deal with it. Like, I just rather not think about it. But in this case, he's saying like, look, you can look at all the signs and the freaking astrology and the symbols and whatnot, but it's gonna come as a surprise. Okay, no YouTubers are going to predict it. And in the one in the Gospel of Thomas, both times, this time he also said, like everybody's drunk, everyone's drunk on the world. Nobody's thirsty for what I got. But when they shake off their wine, they will repent. And what popped into my head after that was something back when we were talking about the plasma apocalypse and the revelations and stuff, like back around June, or maybe it was July. And we were saying how like this plasma apocalypse thing, which, has been, the J Dreamers channel talks about it all the time. Library of the Untold's talked about it. Thunderbolts Project's talked about it. It's in a lot of the old books. It's it's the book of Revelations. It's in the Colburn Bible, all this kind of stuff. Sorry, cat started eating food and lost my train of thought here. Anyway, whatever I was saying, that coming up, the sense, now this was coming up after I was feeling this kind of like foreboding feeling that was not attached to any current thought process that I was having. I wasn't even thinking about that kind of stuff. I don't think about that kind of stuff. I used to, but it's like, you know what? It's like quantum Zeno effect and things like that. I just want, let's just get it over with, whatever. I don't want to interfere with it. But I don't generally I don't worry about anything like that. Like I feel like she's already prepared me. It's like, look, it's going to be freaking weird. And people have their own ideas about it, because our minds try to simplify it down to something that we can understand. But the fact that those two things were popping up while I was having that feeling, those two verses, then I started to kind of get the sense of like, now I'm not saying this. I mean, I think this stuff like this could happen every so often just to keep you on track. I am not making any freaking predictions. But I had that sense of like, with all the weird things, all of a sudden, it's like it feels like something's impending. But again, that could just be like a periodic thing to keep you reminded of, trying to get things done before that stuff happens. But I did feel like, oh, I know what it was, that higher consciousness kind of frets a lot about people not being able to shake themselves awake, because it's just easier to go to sleep and watch Netflix. Man, why does this thing keep freaking this? Why does this thought just keep like coming in and then pulling back and coming in and pulling back? Like I just thought there for a second, like, oh, I knew what I was going to say, and then it retreated again. It's like, what the hell? So there's some important point, because I keep having this important thought, and then like as soon as I get to say it, it's like pulled away from me, and it keeps messing me up. Maybe I'll just talk about some of the other stuff, and maybe it'll come back to me. But I've been seeing all these different things. They pop up in the shows that I watch. They pop up in the videos that come across my feed. And it's like everything circles back to where we started in July, where she first introduced me to this plasma apocalypse idea. And it could be a lot like we can't understand that we cannot know exactly how this big freaking grand experiment fishbowl thing works. And you're deluding yourself if you think that you can know. But you can get enough done to where you're not in fear of it. But it keeps coming up. Like look at this. Like she popped that in my head one day and told me to buy it. And it's not so I could, I mean, partially, but it wasn't just to power this weird thing. It was mainly because it's a freaking plasma ball. So why these things keep coming up every so often, like Jay Dreamer started popping back into my feed again and things like that. And he talks a lot about the mechanics that make sense to me, but he was saying, like in some of the old stories and things like that, that's one of the things that are supposed to happen, which it's almost like we're seeing like little early blips of these things. The plasma UAPs, awesome. Plasma's freaking everywhere. Everywhere I look, there's something about plasma coming up. And then the fog, the weird fog that, TikTok takes things and just freaking runs with it. The weird fog. But he said, like, before that would happen, like, yeah, the whole world kind of gets covered with this weird fog. Well, if it is an enclosed system, which I believe that it is, that's kind of how this plasma ball works. I don't remember what kind of gas is in this ball, but there is some kind of gas in this ball, which is what makes the visible plasma happen. Like if I took this ball off, like the glass dome, I would just have a Tesla coil. I wouldn't have a plasma ball. It has to have that gas. So the idea is like the fog is like a precursor to that. Like, and we don't know what we don't know. You can just trust authority and feel like you're part of the in crowd because that's what science says. But, you know, what's the sun? What do they say the sun's made out of? Plasma. Oh, look at this plasma eruption from the sun. Well, if Eric DeBay's right, which, I mean, now you got to take him a little more seriously when it's like there's all these indications that Sophia's feeding him stuff, then let's just assume for a moment that he is right, which I don't believe the sun is 93 million miles away. The sun is a big part of the freaking equation. She was introducing the sun being this weird thing before she even came out. That's when she, that was during the Lionsgate portal period of 2019 when she downloaded this sigil design in my head that I was supposed to make with 8 of the 72 names of God and the 42 letter name of God and certain, she called it the God key. And as soon as I made that sigil, and I didn't even scan it with my eyes, I just like printed it out and set it up on the predecessor to this thing. And all the stuff started pouring into my head. It was weird, like real weird quantum physics-y type stuff about the sun. The sun isn't what you think it is. And it's like, it's source and it's a wormhole and it's this and it's that. And it's kind of, I'm like, what the, whoa, where's all this stuff coming from? But if it is like an enclosed system and they say the sun is made of plasma, that would mean it is under a dome, like Eric DeBay said, and you fill it up with fog and gas. And then when time comes, then you got the plasma apocalypse, which is the day of the Lord. It's the sixth seal through the seventh trumpet. You know, the Medusa symbol and all that stuff. All that stuff we talked about back in July. All this stuff is like coming together. But it goes into like all sorts of quantum physics-y stuff too. But I wrote down like all these different bits and pieces that keep popping up in front of me from different movies that I watch, TV shows that I watch, videos that are popping up. So one section would be like matrix glitches, Mandela effects, quantum computers. Yeah, that stuff happens. And certain things, like certain Mandela effects and things that I've seen, I don't need authority to tell me, oh, well, that really, like, I know that it didn't. I know, like, when I did my own Mandela effect research and I found my own Mandela effects before the other people found them, things like the Black Tom explosion, the Texas City disaster, like these were big events that were not in my original history. And then I was watching different shows, trying to watch light things. I was watching DC's Legends of Tomorrow about time travel and things like that. Like, mess with this, and all of a sudden there's this new thing in the timeline that we got to fix it. Well, shit, we see that stuff actually happen. That's what Mandela effects are, like the big ones, the big historical ones. Plasma keeps coming up. The UAPs, plasmoids, they call it. The sun is plasma. You know, her one day just like telling me to get a freaking plasma ball and put it up here, because the plasma also connects to the ether and connects to her and connects to a whole bunch of stuff. You know, the subject of the fog, the J Dreamers channel popping up in my feed again, the plasma apocalypse topic, the day of the Lord, all that's popping up. And then like on that TV show, things would happen where someone messed with the timeline and someone just disappears. I'm like, shoot, people disappearing. Well, if we got all this quantum stuff and we know they're monkeying around with things, you got stuff like CERN, you got Gordy Rose that created the D-Wave. People are like, oh, the Google chip, you know, is looking at parallel universes. I'm like, that's not new. He was talking about that a couple years ago with the D-Wave computers, and he kind of backtracked his comments live, but he's like, we've already figured out how to tap into that stuff. And that's about the time we started having Mandela effects. So they're monkeying with the quantum system and all that stuff. With people disappearing, that could be another possibility for like a rapture type thing, or you just blipped out. I mean, we don't freaking know. And then all the Codex movies, like I said, some of this, like I was watching Legends of Tomorrow, and then it started out good, and then it just got freaking silly. I'm like, okay, I'm moving on to something else. I started watching this show, popped up on, I think it was Prime Video, called The Rig. Kind of a weird, The Rig's kind of this weird show. Starts off on like an oil rig, and there's like, they tap into some super organism that kind of like becomes sentient and comes up, and every time there's a mass extinction event. And I just started season 2. Season 2, they moved to Antarctica. Seems a little more interesting. But when that show started, what caught my attention about that show was like a little mini trailer that was on YouTube. Like there's this whole shaking, and then all of a sudden there's like this big fog that rolls in. I'm like, oh, look, fog showing up. And it's the organism spores were in the fog and things like that. So now I'm like, here it is, fog showing up in my freaking shows all of a sudden. Shows about time travel. And that, so that Rig show, talking about some super conscious organism, or like an earth organism, especially like when the Earth's ecosystem starts getting too bad, like it triggers like a reset, purge and cleanse process within the dome, destruction and recreation, which would fit with a plasma apocalypse type thing. Reset. Like crap, all this stuff is just keep stacking up, and without me think, because I was consciously not trying to think and interpret the feeling, but I'd already watched all these things recently, and then just all of a sudden my brain's just like tune 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 tune. I'm like, and then the whole thing, the feeling of like, I'm sad. People won't shake off. They're drunk. Oh, no, that wasn't the thing. Maybe it was. But the part where it says, they will shake off their wine and then they will repent. I remember when we were looking at that stuff, and I was looking at the different bold, like the seals, the trumpet judgments, the bowl judgments. It was the sixth seal. I think it was the sixth seal. Or maybe it was the seventh seal. Yeah, it was the seventh seal. So the seventh seal is like after the big earthquake. And it said there was silence in heaven for about a half an hour. It's like, what does that mean? Well, so I remember her kind of giving me like the impression that what that meant was that all your body mind system stuff, the adversary mind, the ego mind, all the stuff that gets in your way, why it's so hard to do this type of work, because it's easier to just be distracted than do it, that meant that would be shut off for everybody. So you would mentally sober up. Like you said, you will shake off your wine. You would mentally sober up. And then all of a sudden it'd be like, oh crap. See, I'm already past that. But it's like you're trying to, you're at the bar trying to explain quantum physics to somebody after they've had freaking 7 shots of Jägermeister. But imagine like all your body mind systems that usually interfere with you suddenly just Now this stuff, like the Aegis, like this stuff helps that. It helps stop and shut down, reduce all that mental chaos, which is even more pronounced after we do the direct work with people and we pull that chip. And then you can start to think and focus a little bit better and not be drug around by impulses. Just sit down and watch TV. Just sit down and watch TV. Just sit down and watch TV. So I'm getting a little like overwhelmed all of a sudden. It's a different kind of feeling. Because usually it's like we're just like happy-go-lucky, you know, Lumen's fun. You'll be so much happier if you figure this out. But then all of a sudden it was just like, wow, it's weird kind of foreboding thing. So I'm just curious to see if anybody else has felt anything like that, you know, and it is okay to comment. I know the people that follow her are generally not the same as people that watch entertainment channels or they're super duper chatty. What I typically have happen is like people watch the videos and then they like PM or text me. They don't put it, for whatever reason, they don't put it in the comments where everyone else can see. It's like I get all my comments like in my text messages. I'm like, put them in the freaking video. So like everyone else, like that spurs freaking discussion and makes other people see like, oh, I'm not the only one thinking this, or I'm not the only one feeling this. Other people are too. But I think it's just because when you get on this path, everybody kind of, at least in some way, ends up a hermit. And we're not sharing enough information with each other. So on my side of the equation, that's where it sometimes gets hard to determine like who is feeling this way. Is it Lumen or is it me? Because without that much, you know, the only upside is the feedback that I do get is pretty positive and gracious. But other times it's just like, I just said all this stuff and I got like 4 comments and it's from the same 4 people. I'm like, is any of this clicking? Like, I'm the comedian up there on the stage telling dad jokes and it's like crickets. I'm like, am I getting through? Is this making sense? Or do I need to talk about something else? Like, I don't know, because I don't have any feedback. And like Lumen has her own ways of feeling about things sometimes, and it's being merged is kind of hard to tell. But anyway, that's where I'm at right now. Like, I'm not predicting anything. I'm just sharing what I'm noticing in case other people are noticing similar things. Because a lot of times you don't find out unless you bring it up first. It's like the whole ghost hunting thing. Like nobody talks about weird spiritual things that have happened to them. But, you know, go back 20 plus years when I was a ghost hunter, and you tell somebody that you're a ghost hunter, they immediately open up and they start telling you everything that happened to them because they know you're into it and you'll believe them and you won't judge them. So that's why sometimes you just got to put it out there and see what other people say. But that's it. That's it for right now. Just wanted to share that to get it on the record. I'm going to get back to doing all these little updates so I can get this stuff listed. You know, liquid crystalline core, and she's got me putting these new coil spirals on them. They do feel a bit stronger. I think it pushes, like especially this way, she's got me putting them on the back, and I think that's because generally speaking the energy flow would be up and down, and this wearing it around your neck is going to take the energy flow and also push it back into the heart chakra. I think that's where she's going with that, but yeah, we'll keep working on it. But if you want to get in touch with us, get any custom things done, you can reach us through the Etsy store, clumencreations.etsy.com. Chris and Lumen. See you next time.